that's how I explain it to my athletes, my clients, my patients
Mm,
is, yes, we need to do this, but here's why. And once you tell
mm.
them the why, they're like, oh, okay. Because I'm a very much of a why person. My wife will say, well, I saw or I read that you're not supposed to do this or you're not supposed to eat this. Okay, why? I don't know. Well, then that's not good enough for me. I need a reason as why I'm changing my behavior,
Yeah,
right? And then once you have the understanding of why, then you're like, okay, now I get it. Now it relates to me. Because that's at the end of the day, that's all people care about. How does this relate
yeah,
to me? What is the why for me? Yeah.
100% agree. Sweet. Tom, thanks for coming on the podcast.
Oh, thanks for having me, Jack.
A couple of weeks ago, I had a podiatrist on the podcast, and afterwards we were doing a workout. I just like to
Mm-hmm.
do, if they're in person, I love to catch
For
up for a
sure.
workout
Yeah, sweet.
afterwards.
Yep.
And during the workout, I was teaching him things, he was teaching me things, and things that I just like. I've been doing PTs things for almost
Mm-hmm.
20 years now. And he
Yeah.
was just saying to me things that I completely overlook and I didn't realize. And again, I've been doing this for 20 years.
Sure.
And I asked him, why isn't there just one modality or one course or one way of doing it so you can just cover the
Mm.
whole body and everything
Right.
included? And
Yeah.
then you come along, and what you're doing with AMT is very
Mm-hmm.
close to that. So I'm excited to dive into this conversation.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. So how about you introduce yourself and
Okay.
who are you? What do you do?
Uh, Tom Swales. I'm a registered licensed physiotherapist here in Canada, athletic trainer as well, certified down in the US where I did my undergrad, certified strength coach, a bunch of other things and certifications at the end of my name. But I think my main my main description for myself is it would be an educator because no matter what license, what title you have, our goal is to coach and teach those around us so that they become independent and they can start to figure stuff out on their own. So every patient that comes into my office, I treat them like a student and they are a student of their body. And I talk about the anatomy, the nerves, all the stuff, why we're doing something. Because if they understand why we're doing it, then it's going to be more likely they're going to follow the prescription or follow the plan in order to get past their pain, get back into performance, get back into their activities that they enjoy doing. But they won't if we're just sitting there telling them, you need to do this
Mm,
and not tied into the why, their main reason why they're there, their main goals, what is important to them. Compliance is pretty low. But until you can create that emotional connection as to we're going to do these technical things and these exercises and these movements so that you can go back and play pickleball without tweaking your knee, so that you can pick up your grandchild without hurting your back, so that you can just go for a run without pain, right? Once you start tying it back into what's important to them, now, now we can make
mm.
meaningful change because at the end of the day, we can do all the metrics. Oh, look, your muscle testing went, you got your muscles got stronger, your range of motion's better. They don't care. All they care about is, can I do this thing? Yes or no? And can I do this without pain? And can I do it for the long haul?
Mm. So I'd love to dive into your story because again, you got all these titles after your name, but a lot of people do, but most people don't understand the human body like you do. So I'd love for you to go where it all started, but go through your journey and just the lessons along the way that led you to where you are now.
Yeah. So growing up, playing all the sports, played soccer in the States, love movement. I loved every sport. I never loved anything enough where that's the only thing I wanted to do. But I always appreciated human movement and the beauty in which every single athlete could do their things. So I had this innate ability to kind of break it down enough in my head where I could copy it, at least learn enough from it that I could then feel it, experience it, apply it, and then potentially teach it.
Hmm.
So when I graduated my undergrad, I knew I wanted to do PT because here in Canada, like that's where you get your master's, and the scope of practice for PT for physio is so broad, and we can bring in so much different information, so many different tools, modalities, perspectives. So when I looked at that, I'm like, okay, this is for me because I appreciate everything around me, but I wanted to kind of bring in all kinds of different perspectives and then figure out what's the through line through all of these. And the longer I've been doing it, so I graduated, I'm like, I'm only going to be an orthopedic. I'm going to be a sports guy.
Hmm.
So you start treating injuries and you're prescribing exercises and you're doing manual therapy, manipulation, acupuncture, all this stuff. And some people don't always fall into the paradigm of whatever modality you're applying. You're like, well, how come this worked on this person, but not on this person? So what do? I go take another course. Oh, this is going to solve all my problems. I start doing that on everybody. And all of a sudden it works for some, but not others. So I'm like, what the hell? So I go do another course. So after 100 courses and certifications, I just got more confused. I'm like, okay, so some things work for some people. Not everything works for everybody. How do I pull this all together? Because they all have value.
Hmm.
So I always like going back down to first principles. So I left PT school, almost failing PT school because of neuro. I almost failed out, got by the skin of my teeth, and I'm like, I'm never touching neurology again because I'm a sports guy. I'm a movement guy, right? And when you get these weird pain presentations and these weird movement disorders, and people they're not doing what the textbook says, I was like, what is going on here? So I started looking to neurology a little deeper, and I'm like, oh man, the nervous system controls everything. Everybody's
Hmm.
neuro until proven otherwise, right? A tight muscle in the pec or tight muscle in the hamstring. Oftentimes it's nerve. The nerves aren't sliding, they're tensioning because the muscles feel tight because the nerves don't want to stretch. So all of a sudden you start doing nerve mobilizations and all of a sudden the pec releases. All of a sudden, oh, we do some nerve glides or some dural decompression in the spine or some spine stability. And all of a sudden they can touch your toes. Well, I didn't stretch anything, but I
Hmm.
did apply something to the body that created change. So I started looking deeper into neurology, doing concussion courses, looking at the cerebellum, and I started realizing I'm like, oh, there's some oftentimes underlying motor control problems from the top down. So I'll give you an example. So I have the privilege to work with Mitchell Hooper, world's strongest man. He's from our hometown,
Hmm.
and he reached out to me a couple of years ago. He's like, "Hey, I've been told I need to see you," and I was like, "Cool." And when we did the assessment, he had all this right side stuff: tightness, low back, groin, knee, just overloading that right side. So we go through something very basic. We look at his eyes, saccades, and his left eye wasn't converging. I was like, "Oh, that's interesting."
Hmm.
We did some other cerebellar tests, and he's kind of rotating to one side. I was like, oh, okay, well, that's interesting too. And we look at it, and he can't touch his toes. Fine, like he's a big, tight dude, whatever.
Hmm.
But he couldn't stand on one leg, couldn't stand on the left leg. Single leg balance was very, very
Hmm.
bad on that left side. So I was like, well, that's interesting too. So once we start kind of breaking down some of the parts and pieces, structurally he's fine, but he's getting these signals of pain on the right side that's dampening his nervous system and dampening his performance. So all we did at that first appointment is we did some eye exercises to the left to kind of get his brain to pay attention to the left side. We did some neck stuff to get his neck into a better position for back squats. And we did some dural decompression, legs up on the wall, open up the spine. And then we did some rolling to the left, right? Very low level exercises.
Hmm.
He squats. He's like, oh, I feel like I'm squatting normal. I'm like, great. I said, do these exercises before you squat tomorrow. He texts me the next day. He's like, I just PR'd back squat for 800 pounds, 4 reps, no pain. I said, awesome. I use that as an example because what we did was rehab, right?
Hmm.
I'm not going to get him to squat heavier weight. I'm not going to get him to, he's already doing that. But what I need to do is figure out why is his body overloading that right side? And it's simply because he had some top-down control stuff on the left and his nervous system was ignoring the left. So anytime he got into squat or fatigue, he would shift and overload the right because his brain knew that's the strong side. We go to that side. So that's an example later on, but the human is complex, right?
Hmm.
I'm not going to argue that. We are very complex individuals, and once you get into the individual human being, it becomes more complex because of psychology, beliefs.
What's up, everybody? If you're vibing with this content and learning a lot from Tom's episode, then you need to check out the link in the description. Tom was kind enough to send over a free course for you guys to take. Yes, 100% free. It's mainly designed for PTs, coaches, clinicians, but I know my audience, I know you guys, and I know you are going to learn a lot from it. Tom was actually kind enough to send me a few extra courses that I've been taking, and he's just blown my mind. I've been doing this PT thing for about 15 years now, and it's not often that I get my mind blown and learn a lot in the process. And the way Tom, as you're experiencing in this episode, the way he describes it and talks about it, it's just so easy to understand, which makes it easy to implement. So check out the link in the description. Again, it's for coaches, PTs, all that sort of stuff, but I know you are all going to learn a lot from it. So check it out. Let's get back to the episode.
I'm not going to argue that. We are very complex individuals. And once you get into the individual human being, it becomes more complex because of psychology, belief systems, all that stuff, past experiences, past injuries. And once I started to peel back the layers of all these different paradigms, all these different perspectives, I was able to look down and distill down, well, what composes a human being? And it comes down to 5 elements: psychology, neurology, biology, chemistry, and physics. Why do we care about this? Well, what's the first part of every assessment? What's the first part? It's a conversation. I need to listen to you, to your story. I need to ask questions to build a better picture of who you are, your past experiences. I need to know your beliefs. I need to know, do you trust me? And if I can create that trust, that connection, and that safety, nervous system starts to calm down. Now that person, their psychology, they're going to remove those mental barriers. And now whatever I do physically, their nervous system is going to let me do it a little bit more. So then we look at movement. Okay, you can't touch your toes, can't stand on one leg. You're not rotating very well to that side. Well, what's going on there? We don't know yet. So we start breaking down the parts and the pieces, and you start to see, oh, you know what? Your T-spine is not extending and rotating. That could be why you're rotating into your back. Or your hip's not rotating. That could be why you're moving into your knee. So you start looking at the physics of the body, because oftentimes injury that kind of pop out of nowhere, it's a physics problem. Energy moves to the area of least resistance. Well, what's movement? It's energy. But if the brain, the nervous system says, well, I'm not rotating through here, I'm going to do that someplace else. Well, you go from T-spine down to the lower back. Well, guess what is not designed to rotate? The lower back. So now all of a sudden we have an accumulation of forces. We have an overuse injury in that body part. So let's start to redistribute movement through the body. Now we start to see how the biology is starting to reorganize: tissue, cells, modalities. What are we doing? So we apply stress to the body. The body senses that. Do I like this? Yes or no. And then it reorganizes. It starts to, structurally change, not just at a structural level, but a cellular level. And you look at chemistry. Well, how are you sleeping? How are you eating? Because that's all going to affect your chemistry. If you're not eating well, you're going to have chronic inflammation. Shit's not going to heal, right? So we need to make sure your chemistry is on point. And then the last part, which we talked about, was physics. But the belief part of when we look at quantum physics of vibration, frequency, and energy, well, all matter is composed of energy. It's just running at specific frequencies that we can perceive in the 3-dimensional world, right? Because when you look down, coming back to first principles and fundamentals, okay, well, what's a cell made of? Well, it's made of molecules. Cool. Carbon, nitrogen, hydrogen, oxygen, phosphorus. What are those molecules made of? Atoms. All right. Well, let's look at the atom. Well, it's 99.999% empty space, right? So technically, we're just walking, talking bags of empty space. And then you look further down at quarks, and it's just wavelengths. So then you start thinking, well, if we're just this physical matter that is perceived in the 3-dimensional world and is influenced by energy and vibration and frequency, what are thoughts? What are beliefs? They're vibrations, frequencies, and energy that affect biology, right? Because we know from drug trials with placebo effect that 95% of drugs don't make it to market. Why? Because the placebo effect is just as good. Well, what happens there? The brain made the chemistry that the person believed was going to help, and it sorted itself out. So now we come back up to psychology, and this is where people's beliefs and perspectives come into play that affect the physical being. So this is, we don't need to, I very briefly talk to my clients about that, of why things are happening. Like, well, we did this and it had an effect here. Well, here's why, right? But when we can distill things down that is complex, like the individual human being, to first principles, it gives us a better framework in which we can start to build these techniques and these exercises and these modalities on top of, to better explain why they have an effect on the human being. And then the last part is, well, how do I put this into a system that I can move through the body and find out what's priority? And that's an algorithm. So Coming back to what's the first part of an assessment? Well, we're going to have a conversation. Okay, cool. Second part, let's look at posture. How's the body holding itself? What is it avoiding? What is it protecting? Right? What is it? We see muscle atrophy over here. Okay, great. But we're not diagnosing. We're just making observations. How is the body holding itself up? And then we look at how the body's moving through its system. Then we look at the parts. And then we start to go, break down the parts and see what things are not moving, which ones are weak. And then we start to correct the parts, and then we integrate the parts. So everything has an algorithm. This is what I figured out. You go to a pilot, they're training. They have a checklist of things before they leave, right? They have a checklist. They have foundation knowledge in which they build more knowledge on top of. So everything that we work with is an algorithm. And if we can find the algorithm, we can quickly move through the systems, find out what parts of the algorithm are stuck or not working, sort those out, and then quickly move through it. So that's, I know, long and winded for your audience. Sounds more complicated. The building of it and the explanation is way more complicated than the application. Because once you start to go through it, you start to see, okay, the neck's not rotating, but the low back is, but yet they have low back issues. Maybe we sort out the neck first, because when I turn my head to the right, if I can't look over my shoulder, I'm going to move a little bit more in my lower back. Well, if we sort out the neck, which is a survival reflex, cervical colic, well, then we stop rotating, but the neck initiates rolling patterns. So I don't know if it's just looking at the body as a system first, because we're a system of systems. Look at what parts. Oh, that doesn't look like it's moving right. What does that feel like? Oh, it's kind of pinchy. Sort out the parts and then start integrating movement. And all of a sudden the body and the nervous system starts to reorganize. Now things start to feel good. Now the nervous system releases energy because it's not worrying about protection. It's now going to liberate that neural energy and make the body feel safe. And once the body and the nervous system feel safe, people are like, oh, I have more energy. I feel good. I'm moving good. Great. Now let's go do other fun stuff.
I absolutely love that. And as you were talking through how you do the assessments and how it relates back to, physics, quantum mechanics, all that sort of stuff, I was just like, light bulbs in my head, excuse me, just clicking each and every time. Back to, I guess, an example would be when you get a client to do something that they just don't think they can do, say a box jump, or just jumping onto something that's challenging for them, and I can't do it. And as soon as they do it, again, their energy and their mindset and everything just changes in their body, and they feel like they can achieve more.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It's the 4-minute mile,
Yeah.
right? Everyone thought, well, if you run a mile in less than 4 minutes, your head's going to explode. It's physiologically impossible. And then I can't remember the runner who did it. All of a sudden, one guy does it, and he's like waiting for his head to explode. And then the next couple of weeks, was it 37 other runners break that as well, that 4-minute mark, because the belief systems changed. It didn't change their physiology, it didn't change their biology, but their belief systems changed, and it unlocked that greater potential. So when we have clients coming in, oh, I saw my doctor and I have degenerative disc disease, and they said I can never pick up anything heavier than 10 pounds and this, that. I'm like, you pick up groceries, right? You pick up your kid. Pretty sure that's heavier than 10 pounds. But that fear is placed in them, and that limits their nervous system and their physiology. So they put the brakes on because it's safety. The primary job of the nervous system is don't die. Look for safety, avoid pain and harm. But if we can show our clients that, look, nothing broke. You're not fragile. Nothing exploded. Oh, you get them to breathe into those positions. The nervous system starts to calm down. They start to feel a little safer. They get more confident. And now they can start moving in and out of those positions. Now we can start loading those positions. Now we can go with velocity into those positions. That's the biggest part with a lot of our clients, is removing those mental barriers and those belief systems that they either imposed on themselves or some other professional imposed upon them.
And that's where
we're not fragile.
No,
No.
definitely not. We can withstand a whole lot more than we can actually, what we think we can do. And that's where I wanted to go, because again, I see a lot of clients and they come in and, oh, I can't do this, or like, I can't get injured, and just their mindset. And again, as soon as you show that they can do things, their mindset changes.
Right.
So if somebody's listening to this and they're motivated to get training and start doing something, like, where should people think about starting? If they're just brand new to training, where should they start? What should they think about?
Well, it's always helpful to have a goal. So we have a target that we're shooting for. But if the goal is just, I just want to move better without pain, I want to go up and down the stairs without fear of falling, it's, you know, try a little bit, play within, play within your comfort zone, and then push a little bit more than that. People who are starting out new, they're like, go for a walk. You walk, right? Like you walk to work, you walk to the fridge, you walk around your house. Start with that. Just do it a little bit longer
Mm,
and then slowly build up that time. Start where you're at and then just do a little bit more than that. If people are hesitant to lifting weights or doing core work, or I just tell them, you know what, start on the floor. Where did we learn to move where did we learn to first move as babies? On the floor, right? Sit on the floor. Sit on the floor in any position you want for 5 minutes and just sit there. After about 5 minutes, things will start to feel a little uncomfortable. Well, that's the nervous
mm,
system saying, you know what, you need to change positions. That I've had enough here. The tissues are starting to get a little annoyed. So change positions. Now sit in a shin box, sit V-sit, sit cross-legged, flip over onto your stomach, right? People who say they don't have time for exercise, I'm like, fine. Do you watch TV at night? Great. Sit on the floor for an entire show
mm,
and don't get off the floor. But listen to what your body's telling you. And all of a sudden they're like, oh, my back feels looser, my hips feel looser. Well, yeah, because when you're sitting on the floor, you don't have this back support and this chair to kind of do the work for you. You have to use your core muscles. You have to breathe. You have to stay upright. You can't slouch sitting on the floor. You fall over. And when you're sitting on the floor, your hips have to open up and they have to mobilize in certain ways, and muscles have to learn to relax.
mm,
What we know with stretching and flexibility is we're not actually changing the length of muscles. We're improving its tolerance to stretch. And the nervous system is learning to cope with that and relax into that stretch. So it's reducing tone. So people who have, I got tight hamstrings. I'm like, you don't. You unless you have trauma where you tore the hamstrings off, you've got scar tissue in that, and it's causing mechanical or structural changes. You don't necessarily have tight hamstrings. But what you might have is a poorly stabilized spine, which is then your brain's like, well, I need to use hip flexors and hamstrings to protect my spine. So we're going to keep those on to do the work. And you just have tone. But it's
mm.
because you haven't moved into those ranges for such a long time. So what's the nervous system going to say? Oh, doesn't feel safe, might hurt me. I'm going to stop you from moving any further into this. Because the nervous system is a brake system, it's not an accelerator, right? It's when we can make the body feel safe, it takes the brakes off. All of a sudden, oh, I like that. Let's do this faster. It's a
Mm.
governor switch. It's not an accelerator. And once we figure that out, that oh, this is just this sensation I'm feeling. This isn't harm. It's a signal saying I'm not comfortable here. But if we breathe through this position long enough, it will start to loosen off. It will start to get comfortable. And that discomfort is good. It's a signal to pay attention, but it's also a signal for change. Discomfort is a signal to move. When we sit in a chair, chairs are designed so we can sit for hours on end because they're comfortable, right? But it's like it's like a filter on a cigarette,
Mm.
right? You can do it longer. You're just going to die later. But if we sit on the floor, you're going to get that signal because it's a hard surface, and we're creating hypoxia in the glutes or the hamstrings or whatever. Well, you shift and we move around because the tissues, those signals are saying, you need to move around
Mm.
because we're loading up these tissues too much. We need to offload that to something else or distribute forces someplace else in the body. So
I,
what I tell clients, start on the floor, start there and move
mm.
around. Set a timer, 5 minutes. Do a little like experiment, explore the ground, play with different positions because then you got to support yourself on the shoulder and the hand. Okay, what's that doing? What does that feel like? Oh, a little uncomfortable? Stay there and breathe. You don't
Mm.
need to sit there and stretch and bounce. Just breathe it out and watch the nervous system start to reorganize your structure.
I love your example of the tight hamstrings because, again, a lot of my clients been here in the
Yep.
city at a desk most of the day, sit
Yep.
down, and again, they think they have tight hamstrings,
Yeah.
but trying to explain them exactly what you just said, it's not really tight hamstrings. It's just your nervous
No.
system isn't comfortable in those positions.
Right.
So, can you just, I guess, dive into that a little bit more, just so next time I have
Yeah.
this come up, I can explain a little bit better to my clients?
So we're sitting right now in chairs. What are we stretching? We're stretching our glutes and we're stretching our hamstrings. Okay. If I'm slouching, what am I stretching? All my erector muscles in my lower back. But people stand up, they're like, oh, my glutes and my low back are so tight. No, you've been stretching those all day. get on the ground and do glute bridges, get your glutes firing up in a short range, get your erectors to fire up, and then watch. All of a sudden, you can touch your toe. Oh, they're not tight anymore. Yeah, but we didn't stretch them.
Mm.
We contracted them. We strengthened them. We provided stability and control in those muscles you've been overstretching all day. And your nervous system said, well, I like that. I'm going to take the tension off the hamstrings now. So now all of a sudden, I can take the brakes off and I can touch my toes simply because we added strength and control in the opposite range. So doing isometrics in those very extreme ranges, especially the short ranges, 30, 60 seconds, and then watch people can touch their toes and they can balance better and they can feel muscles switched on. It's
Mm.
not magic, but it's sometimes intuitive of, okay, what was the thing I was doing all day? Do the opposite of that. Everyone's at their computers doing this all day. Oh, I got tight shoulders. Okay, well, what's the opposite of that? Well, maybe if I extend my elbows, turn the palms upside down, and reach behind me with a dowel, maybe that'll open up everything. And I just do a couple pulses there, and also my pecs and everything loosened off, right? Because I strengthened the backside
Mm.
because I've been stretching those all day. We don't need to sit there and stretch a pec. We need to strengthen the opposite side, the opposite of the pecs or opposite of the biceps or whatever that is.
Mm.
So when we're working with clients, we ask them, well, what do you do for work? Well, I sit at a desk all day, but I have tight hip flexors. I got tight glutes. I got tight all this. You don't. Because when we look at your length tension, the length is fine. But when we do muscle testing, they're weak as shit.
Mm.
So guess what we got to do? We got to do some strength. And then when we apply the inputs that the nervous system's looking for and yelling at you to do to create tone, create tightness, all of a sudden things start to feel looser. It
Mm.
seems counterintuitive because people say, oh, I stretch my hip flexors. I'm like, please stop stretching your hip flexors. They are not tight, but your glutes are weak. Your deep hip rotators are weak. Your lower abdominals are weak. So we're going to do some strength around the hips, and then we'll check to see how tight your hip flexors are. And all of a sudden, we did nothing with the hip flexors, and they feel looser simply because we added the inputs the body was telling them that they needed.
Mm. So the way I'm hearing that is a tightness comes from a weakness on the other side.
Yes, oftentimes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Um, that's why when people get in kind of these overuse syndromes, but I'm like, but you sit at a desk. So what is it exactly you're overusing? You're overusing some of the posture muscles because they're fatiguing out on you. So maybe some of the big muscles around. You got tonic and phasic muscles. Yeah, your erectors are screaming at you because you've demanded this isometric contraction for the last couple hours. So maybe we do some dead bugs or some crawling on the other side so that
Mm.
they get a break and all of a sudden things feel better,
Mm.
right? I mean, this is where we overthink things and we can overcomplicate things. And we think just because something feels tight, we stretch it. Just because something is painful, something's wrong. Oftentimes it's not.
Mm.
But when you start to look at the body as a system again, and you look at what that person does repetitively, whether it's sitting, standing, rotation, whatever it is, and you do the opposite of that, oftentimes that corrects a lot of the issues.
Mm.
Now, there are times where there's going to be some orthopedic trauma or tendon issues or injuries or joint whatever. Fine, yeah, we approach that a little bit differently, but not really, because you still have to ask, well, why did that get overused? What is it around that is not doing its job that you overuse those tissues?
Mm.
Right. So yeah, it comes back to a physics problem. You're just not moving enough in the opposite directions, and you have to redistribute forces around the body.
Mm. And that's easier said than done. But before we get
Yes.
into actual training, let's dive into pain for a second.
Yep.
I don't know if it's the same where you are, but here I just seem to get more and more consultations of people just being afraid of getting injured. It's like, I cannot get injured. If I get injured, my
Yep.
training and everything's done. I'm finished. I can't
Yep.
do anything. I'm like, well, like that's not necessarily true. And again, like, as you've mentioned, pain isn't
Yep.
necessarily mean you're going to die or anything's going to rip off your body or anything like that.
No.
So
Yep.
why do you think more people are scared of getting injured and like, will they actually get injured? And is it a bad thing?
Because a lot of the training and movements we do is not, we don't move in the full capacity that we have available to us. We move very linearly. People go to the
Mm,
gym, they sit all
yeah.
day, they walk forwards and backwards, and then they go to the gym and they squat up and down, and then they do leg curls. So everything's in single planes, and they don't know how to manage their body through the transverse and maybe the frontal plane.
Mm.
I'm going to pick on CrossFit a little bit because all my CrossFit friends love it when I do that. So CrossFit, all the movements are very up and down, forwards and backwards. But we know as humans and athletes that rotation is a huge factor into that. Side bend is it like you got to move through that frontal plane, transverse. All movements are happening all at once. But if you overtrain one plane of movement, those other muscles that help either stabilize or contribute to the other movements, they start to atrophy.
Mm.
So then now we got these overuse. My knees hurt, my calves are tight, my low back is tight. Well, what have you done for the rotators of the hip? What have you done for the rotators of the trunk? What have you
Mm.
done for the side benders of the trunk? Nothing, right? But when we move forwards and backwards, those act like stabilizers. But if we don't train those other planes of movement, then we overuse that sagittal plane movement and all those muscles start to gas out because the brain's now trying to use those movers as stabilizers. So now they
Mm.
never get a break and everything feels tight again. So people feel fear because they haven't developed a relationship in the different planes of movement and they're not comfortable with their body in space in enough ways.
Mm.
What's one of the biggest things that people fear as we get older? Falls,
Yeah.
right? Well, what's your relationship with the ground like? When have you gone back down to the ground? Never. So of course you're going to be scared because if you trip and you can't catch yourself with a foot and have enough strength to decelerate, you're going to hit the ground. And if you're older, your likelihood of breaking a hip goes up. If you break a hip, we know that longevity goes down.
Mm.
So yes, we want to teach people have better balance. We want to create those unstable environments in a stable, safe environment like the gym, get them on the Bosu balls, balance beams, whatever, right? Challenge them so that they have the confidence that they know how to make those corrections quickly before a fall happens. Now, if a fall does happen, they need to know how to quickly drop their center of gravity and then absorb forces through the body. So how do we do that? Well, let's get on the ground and start rolling around. Let's do some rolling. Let's do some rocking. Let's do some transitions. Let's do some crawling. Because if they do end up on the ground, they know how to manage their body with gravity when they're there. They
Mm.
know how to, they have that relationship with the ground again. So now we've eliminated a lot of that fear of falling. But that's where people will have a lot of fear. It's because they don't want to fall because they don't know how to manage the fall. So there's fall prevention, but there's also fall management.
Mm. I guess it's similar to the nervous system. It's like their fear is that fear of being on the ground, but it's that
Mhm.
again, you could take it back to their nervous system, just being scared of that range that
Yep.
they're not used to
Yep.
and they
For
don't want to
sure.
be in. Mm.
Yep. Yep. Like I don't go down there, so I don't know what to do if I end up there.
Mm.
But it's also capacity. It's also challenging them in various ways. Um, we use 2x4s. We use balance beams in our clinic a lot.
Mm.
And with my pro athletes or with my or elderly clients, everybody needs balance and control. Like
Yep.
balance and control and mobility are your foundations, and strength are your foundations for speed, power, skill, and agility. But if you don't have those prerequisites, well, then doing all the higher level stuff, it'll be scary because if you lose balance and you fall, bad stuff could happen. But if
Mm.
you have those prerequisites and you can make those micro adjustments quickly and the nervous system catches those mistakes before they happen, well, removes the fear. And if
Yep.
they do end up on the ground, at least they have enough strength that they can manage their body hitting the ground,
Mm.
right? Why are push-ups functional? Well, if I fall, I can decelerate myself from the broken nose, right?
Mm.
Why do we do squats? Well, I can decelerate myself down. Like if I step off a curb inappropriately, at least I can catch myself with a foot and do a single leg squat. So we can say, well, we do all these things for sport, but sport is a higher those are higher proxies or higher levels of human performance. But regardless of what speed you're doing it at or what intensity, you still have to have those same components for everyday life in case shit happens,
Mm.
right? It's
Yep.
building capacity. It's the capacity to manage themselves. And if they don't have the capacity to manage themselves, they're never going to have the confidence to do it. And that's why they're going to put the brakes on, be like, well, if I stress myself, if I test myself here and I don't have the strategies and the capacity to manage this, I'm going to get hurt.
Mm.
So at the end of the day, it comes back to capacity and ability. But
Mm.
we have to start to build all those different abilities from the ground up so that we can manage ourselves in any context that life
Yeah.
throws at us.
Let's dive into that. So back to my training, I broke myself doing CrossFit. It was fun
Okay.
at the time, but I learned the hard way. And
Yep.
now I've just probably spent the last 5 to 6 years just undoing all that work. Again, like you said,
Yep.
it was just all one mode, like one way.
Yep.
Like you're
One plane.
running, you're
Yep.
jumping, you don't ever
Yep.
move, rarely move
Side to side
sideways.
rotation. Yep.
And now I post a lot of things where I'm bending in weird positions, like I'm bending my
Yep.
back, and
Good.
people will message and be like, "Oh, isn't that bad for your back?" And I'm like, "Well, I've got a fractured vertebrae and a bulged disc, and it feels amazing. Like I love doing it because I'm pain free through my back
Yep.
with that injury. So I know what I need to do to get it. But let's go into the gym. I guess
Yep.
I'll ask this question. If you could prescribe 10 exercises
Mm-hmm.
to every single person on the planet,
Yep.
and they had to do those 10 exercises every single day, what would they be?
Number one's breathing. If you cannot breathe properly, if you cannot breathe into your diaphragm, you cannot stabilize your spine.
Mm.
Breathing is the first movement we learn when we come into this world. Watch any baby born. What's the first thing baby does? Takes its first breath. Perfectly. Diaphragm, right? See
Mm.
belly expand, three-dimensional expansion, right? It's oxygenating effectively. It's transitioning its nervous system into parasympathetic. But if we can't breathe and our breathing is dysfunctional, every other movement we build on top of that will be dysfunctional because we're building
Mm.
dysfunction on top of dysfunction. So the number one thing with a lot of our clients, we get them aware of, well, show me how you're breathing. And they're doing this. And they wonder why their neck is tight, their low back is tight, and their shoulders hurt. I said, do you know how many
Mm.
breaths you take in a day? About 24,000. So it means you're doing 24,000 shrugs. You're going to have amazing traps. The problem with that also is your nervous system. When I breathe up into here, we have these what's called sympathetic ganglion in the thorax. And when we stimulate those, it sends the nervous system into a sympathetic state. Cortisol, high stress, fight, flight. When we're in that state, we can't recover, can't
Mm.
digest food. We're not going to have good sleep. We're always in this kind of low level state of stress, and the body never has an opportunity to heal. So we want to make sure that people are aware of their breathing, that they can breathe into their belly, and they can quickly down regulate so that they're not living in that state of stress. And then if I know
Mm.
they can breathe into their belly, great. Now I can teach you inner core exercises, dead bugs, bird dogs, crawling, planks. We start to build those slings and that central control first. So breathing, number one, anything on the ground, whether you're
When
doing
you
dead bugs. Yep.
when you say crawling, just
Yep.
what do you mean?
Locomotion on the floor.
Mm.
So there are all kinds of different. So we do what hand knee crawl or baby bear crawl to bear crawl to elephant crawl. Like there's all kinds of different ways to crawl,
Mm.
and all of them are restorative. You can crab crawl. What does that do? Well, it works on glutes and shoulder extension and pops the chest up. So it opens up the backside and the front side. And then you side crawl, transition, whatever it is. We'll just call it ground movement,
Mm.
any kind
Love
of
that.
ground flow. Okay.
Yep.
So we don't have to say what kind of crawl because there's all kinds of different ways to crawl and they're all fun.
Mm.
And I get every single one of my athletes, they are doing some form of crawling in every single block of training because it's hard,
Mm.
but it helps restore that cross cord reflex. So for gait, for running, because we got to crawl before we walk.
Mm.
And if somebody's walking weird, get them to crawl. And you're like, that's why your walking looks weird because your crawling is crap. And then you start to coordinate that, opposite shoulder and hip. And all of a sudden they start walking better or
Yeah.
differently, right? We just
Oh,
reorganized. We just went down to a lower level of movement with a crawl and it reorganized stuff because
I
we
always.
can't coach walking and running. You can't
Mm.
because that's an end product of an organized system. But if it's disorganized, they're going to get the job done however they can. And it
Mm.
might look funky and weird and inefficient, but they're going to do the best way they can. So, well, let's go down to crawling or rolling. If they can't do those, well, that's probably why your walking and running look so weird.
Mm.
So let's fix those down here before we go back up into this. So ground transitions, start from the
Yep.
ground. Easy entry point. It's fun. It's hard. You'll feel your
Mm.
core working. It works on your posture. It works on grip. It works on scap control. It works on hip mobility. It works on all the stuff. So some form of ground transitions.
Mm.
From there, I would say, well, where do we go from there? From crawling, let's go into an upright position. Single leg balance. Can you stand on one leg? Yes or no? For 10 seconds with your eyes closed. If you cannot do that, running and walking probably isn't going too good for you because you need to be able to stand on one leg with control before you run.
Mm.
Right. So my runners come in on my knee, my back, and all of a sudden I look, well, let's look at your balance. Stand on one leg. And they're doing all this weird rotation stuff. And I take away their eyes and they fall over. It's like, so you can't do this statically, but yet you're trying to do this dynamically
Mm.
with 2 to 4 times body weight. That's
Mm.
why shit hurts. Right. Let's clean that up. So we need a level of control. So any kind of balance training, I would say, is helpful. Now, whether you do that stable surface, unstable surface, there's value in both. But I usually start people on a hard surface, stable. Can you do it here? Yes or no? And then we start to challenge them from there. And then if we look at what are some of the first movements babies learn to do? They climb, they crawl, and they carry stuff.
Mm.
I have videos of my kids. I didn't teach them how to stabilize their shoulders. I didn't teach them how to walk. They figured it out, but they spend a lot of time crawling
Mm.
and they would just squat. And if they squatted and they could pick up something, they would do that. But if they couldn't, they used a hip hinge. They would elevate their center of gravity because they move the most efficient way possible because they're these
Mm.
little loose bag of bones. They don't have stiffness like we have.
Mm.
So watch kids how they move. They will squat perfect ass to
Yeah.
grass. My
Mm.
son still plays Lego. He's 9 and he's in a perfect squat all the time, but that he
So,
just lives there.
mm.
Our daughter, who's 12, she's playing basketball. She's gone through some growth spurts. She's lost her squat because she's tightened up a little bit. So we're working on that again, right? But it's getting her
Mm.
back on the ground to loosen off and stabilizing her spine again. So, this is now we come into squatting and hinging because we all squat. We had to sit down in a chair. We got to go to the bathroom. We got to be able to lower ourselves safely down to the ground, but we also have to pick stuff up.
Mm.
Now, deadlifts are functional, but they're not practical because what is the function of a deadlift? Pick up something and carry it someplace else. Carries are practical.
Mm.
Our ancestors didn't sit there and do repetitive deadlifts. They probably were moving shit around, right? Pick that heavy thing up and move it over there so that we can do whatever we need to do to survive.
Mm.
So hinging and squatting, right? And then, so that's what, 1, 2, 3, 4. Any kind of push pull, right? Go back to push-ups.
Mm.
Why do we need to do push-ups? Well, we need our body strength. Well, again, if you go to the ground unexpectedly, hopefully you have enough strength to lower yourself down safely, right? Decelerate that broken nose.
Mm.
Any kind of pull, hanging. Let's just hang off stuff. Because what does hanging
Mm.
do? It works the grip reflex, stabilizes shoulders, decompresses spine, right? We get to kind of experiment how those shoulders are moving, and we can climb.
Mm.
Because hanging is a prerequisite for pull-ups, but pull-ups are functional, but they're not practical. What's practical? Climbing.
Mm.
Our ancestors didn't sit there and do a bunch of pull-ups. They climb on stuff, right? And kids do that intuitively,
Mm.
right? They're climbing up on the couch, they're climbing on the walls, they're climbing up the trim, whatever it is. So we got carrying, climbing, and then crawling, which we've already talked about.
Yep.
So we have the 3 C's, and we talk about that in the AMT, but as well as in my shoulder course, the 3 C's of restoring shoulders is climb, crawl, carry.
Mm.
Because kids, again, I didn't sit there. They have these very loose shoulders. I didn't give my kids rotator banded exercises to work on the rotator cuffs because they have unstable shoulders. No, they just climb, crawl, and carry, and they work
Mm.
it at a reflex level. So let's do that because those are very restorative. When I got sick in the hospital, those are my staples right there because I couldn't do much. I had to rebuild my
Mm.
body back, but I knew I'm like, okay, I need to rebuild from the top down, center out, and the ground up. So I did a lot of climbing or hanging, a lot of crawling, and a lot of carrying just to kind of reorganize my body and start to build my center strength before I started to add the peripheral.
Mm.
So I didn't have the capacity in the periphery, but I could do those things a lot. Another thing I would say is jumping. There's a saying, the moment you stop jumping is the moment you start dying.
Yeah.
So your ability to leave the Earth's surface to some capacity, but then absorb forces again, it teaches you deceleration, comes back to falling.
Mm.
When we run, when we walk, that's a controlled fall. kids, it was funny. Watching my daughter, she would intuitively, when she was like 2, she would go up onto her tippy toes and she would lean forward and she would fall into a sprint. That's how she sprinted. She was using gravity to initiate propulsion.
Mm.
And she's like, boom, right into a sprint. But that's what sprinting and running is. It's a fall. We lean forward to change our center of gravity, destabilize ourselves, and we catch ourselves with our feet. But we have to have some degree of shock absorption and capacity to absorb forces so that we could stop it and then repel, rebound out of that. And then we use, the fascial system, neuromuscular system to bounce to
Mm.
become energy efficient. So jumping would be one. Doesn't matter how high, start with just jumping in one spot. Jump up, land and stick. Jump up, land and stick. Repeat jumps, right? And there's a triple extension, triple flexion that we need to work on that. And then once you start getting comfortable with the landing, well, now the brain, the nervous system is like, well, I'm comfortable at this height. I can manage this fall. Now let's jump up on something.
Mm.
Because if you're coming back to your client, if they're scared of jumping up on a box, they're scared of coming off the box because the nervous system's
Yeah.
like, I don't know how to get off that thing if I get up there.
Mm.
So jumping up on the box, they have to have confidence to come down. But if
Mm.
they're not even comfortable jumping 6 inches, don't have them jump 20.
Mm.
Because the nervous system's like, they'll get up there and they're like, I don't know what to do. I'm just going to crawl down.
Yeah.
Right. So what's that? 5, 6. Um, I mean, you can branch from so many different avenues just with those 5,
Mm.
6 basic movements and expand on that. Um, from jumping, you get into plyometrics and ballistics. I love kettlebell swings, but that's a hip hinge. It's just a ballistic hip hinge.
Yeah.
We also use kettlebell swings to teach people how to jump from their hips and absorb forces from their hips. So I
Mm.
love kettlebell swings. A Turkish get up. Well, what's a Turkish get up? It's a roll to a crawl to a kneeling to a stand.
Mm.
So I would use that pattern to get up off the ground because I didn't have enough strength in my body and my legs yet. I would use a Turkish get up pattern to align my body to stack it as efficient as possible so that I had the mechanical advantage to get upright off the ground. And
Mm.
I would use that for people with total hips, total knees. Oh, you can't bend the knee past 90? Great, we can use a Turkish get up because you got to get down to the floor, but you got to be able to get up off the floor. So some of these little, what would be called, fitness or strength exercises, they're really good movement patterns to restore human movement.
Mm. I guess where I was going with that question
Yep.
is seeing how simple your answers are. Like there's no complicated, you got to do this, this, and this, and overcomplicate. It's simple, but it's super
Simple.
effective, like you just explained. And it's
Yep.
something every single human should be able to do as well. If you
Yep.
can't do those, you shouldn't be going into other modalities of
No.
training.
Right.
So, what are the biggest misconceptions, myths, or that people are getting wrong that you see when they're getting into training?
That they have to leave the gym a big puddle mess, right?
Mm,
Like they're like,
yeah,
oh, I gotta feel like I destroyed myself. I'm like,
yeah,
okay, let's go back to the nervous system. You crush yourself and you're a heaping pile of pain and sweat on the ground. Yes, you burned a lot of calories. Yes, you created some stress in the body that hopefully gives us a positive adaptation. From a longevity perspective, you're nervous, so you can tell yourself, I did good. I've earned this, right?
mm,
That's grit and that's a mindset, but you can only do that for so long because over time, if you keep causing pain in your workouts, your nervous system will find every reason not to do that tomorrow. So with my athletes, I'd always say, we're going to leave a few in the tank.
mm,
And I want them feeling better than when they came in because you know why? Tomorrow, they're going to be excited for training again. Their nervous system's like, I felt so good doing that. I want to do it more. So now I've built consistency and volume over time. If I crush that, and now there is times where with our athletes that we need to push them
mm,
to build capacity, to build resilience, to find out what their limits are. But you don't do that very often. Power lifters, Olympic lifters, they will test their 1 rep max twice a year.
mm,
That's it. They don't train close to that because they need to get the reps in and they need the practice. If they hurt themselves in training or they're too sore and they got to take a couple of days off, well, now they've reduced their training capacity or they've reduced their training volume. That's not good for competition. a good example of this. I worked with professional kickboxer, and those guys, their mentality is, unless I'm bleeding, broken, and suffering, I did not have a good training session.
Mm,
And I said, here's what I want you to do. I want you to take a training log. And I gave him some scores, and I created what's called a DARQ, a daily athlete readiness questionnaire. And I said, you're going to log every day number of hours of sleep, right? We're looking for that 7 to 9. Then you're going to rate what was the quality of that sleep, 0 to 10, 10 being the best, one being complete crap. Then you're going to rate your stress levels, okay? 0 to 10, 10 being not good, one being amazing. Then you're going to rate your energy, 10 being good, one being crap. Then you're going to measure your durability. How much more crap do you think you can take today? If that's high, great. And then what I had him do was also balance out. You're going to take your blood pressure and your heart rate, and you're going to match those against those days where you feel really good versus the days you don't feel good.
mm,
And we were able to gauge what his training days look like. So I said, look, when you've got a good score here, energy's high, durability's high, stress is low, sleep is great, and your blood pressure and grip strength and your heart rate are good, those are good days.
yeah.
Go after it. But then the next day, you're going to do it again. And if those scores are low, that's a shadow boxing day. That's a mobility day. That's a recovery day. I'm not saying you don't have to train, but you're not going to put yourself in a hole. Because if he kept training that intensely, you're going to dig yourself into a hole, and now you need a week off. So once we got his mindset around that, he could train every single day. And then he ended up going into his competition peaked and not
Mm,
crushed
mm,
because he wasn't doing a good job of periodizing his training into competition because his mentality was, I need to kick my ass every day. That's not how it works.
mm,
We do not work that way.
yeah.
It's undulating. It is, we work in ebbs and flows. If we were
Mm,
linear in our training, that means a 90-year-old person would be the strongest person in the world because they
yeah.
just keep compounding more weight, more reps every single day. Not how it works. And your
And
nervous system, once you figure out your nervous system's in charge of this, well, now you can communicate with it and listen to it and be like, oh, you know what? Today's not a hard day, but we can still get some work done, and
mm,
we'll push the hard day to tomorrow. So people need to understand most of us are in training for longevity. We're not in high performance. And those are two different ends of the spectrum. To go in and crush yourself, unless you're an Olympic athlete where you can manage your sleep, manage your stress, you've got a coach, you've got a nutritionist, you've got all the pieces in place that you can push the body every day, which you are not,
yeah.
then great, right? But most people, you got to leave feeling good. If
Yeah.
you leave feeling bad, you're going to find every reason not to do that tomorrow.
I think that's a big thing people see. Like social media is the worst for that because they'll see these athletes absolutely killing it. And then
Yep.
unfortunately, the athletes will put out their training or training plans and that
Yep.
sort of stuff. And it's like, oh, I'll do that. And it's like, well, no, hold on. Like you said, you need to have the nutrition dialed in, everything dialed in, doctors on hand, physios on
Yep.
hand, but you just don't have that. And you're sitting at the desk for 8 hours a day and then trying to train like an athlete. It's just not going to work.
Right. Well, just like you said, when you're posting, you're doing back bridges and Jefferson curls, right? Did you do that with heavy weight right off the hop, or did
No.
you improve? No, you didn't. You probably did sit ups, and you did with a dowel for many, many repetitions to get the
Mm,
capacity, to get the connective tissue to adapt. And then you start adding weight and you start increasing range and you start increasing hold times. But then the end product after a year plus of creating those positive adaptations, well, now, yeah, you can do a back bridge and it feels good. But
mm,
people will look at the video, I'm going to try a back bridge. Please don't.
yeah.
Yeah, shit's going to hurt and it's not
Mm,
going to feel good. But someone who's trained all the pieces to tolerate those positions, yeah, they do feel good and they are positive. But not
mm,
everybody can do that. And not everybody wants to put in the work to do that. So they look
mm.
at the end result, muscle ups. Oh,
Yeah.
so I saw so many bicep tears from muscle ups and kipping. And I'm like, okay, can you do one strict pull up with rings to chest? Yes
Yeah.
or no? No, you
Yeah.
can't. Please do not do muscle ups because you're blasting all the connective tissue and you're bouncing off the shoulders. And
Yeah.
then you wonder why and then you're doing this chicken wing thing up there. I was
Mm,
like, I know why you tore your shoulder off,
yeah.
right? But they didn't build the capacity and the patterns before they trained the skill. They just wanted to go straight into the skill because the skill is cool and fun.
Mm,
Yes, you'll get there. But if you want to hold on to that skill for life, you need the pieces and you need the components and you need to train everything properly. And then you piece it all together at the end.
yeah. And again, that's one big thing I learned as a CrossFit coach. Like these people just kept breaking. And again, I was like, well, what's going on here? And it's like,
Mhm.
well, can they do a pull up? No. So then a lot of the time, the training, the way I do it now as well, it's like I maybe do a CrossFit workout once a month, and that's
Yeah.
I guess, game day, but the rest is
Sure.
just practice and training for that game day
Yeah.
for the rest of the month. But
Yeah.
it just feels so much better. I feel so much better, and your performance, like you said, is way better in those workouts.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Shit shouldn't hurt. If
Mm,
things are hurting, you either did something wrong, you're doing a movement that you're not ready for, you're hitting a range that you don't own. So you need to figure out, well, don't keep pushing that and thinking that pain is a good thing. Pain is a signal to pay attention. Pain is also a signal to stop, especially if
mm,
it's sharp, pinchy. Those are signals saying you're really pushing the limits here on these tissues. And if you keep pushing it or ignoring it, something will fail. So it's appreciating those signals of the body that the nervous system is trying to protect you and make you pay attention and maybe figure out why these things feel the way they feel and
mm.
find a coach, find an expert to be like, oh, you know what? You're getting that pinchy shoulder because you can't extend your T-spine and rotate. So let's do some thoracic openers first. Let's do some scap retraction. Let's work on the scap stability and the setting first before we start popping into that dip.
Mm.
But yeah, people are forcing square pegs into round holes and then expecting amazing outcomes.
Yeah. But yeah, like you said, it's just doing the simple things first that can
Yeah,
be so much more effective and help you get those goals, results, whatever you're looking for.
but that's not
Let's
sexy.
Nah, true. And
And people are impatient.
yeah.
People want I want to do the muscle up. I want to do the backflip. I want to do the pistol squat now. So that's what
Mm,
I saw, but they don't realize how much time it takes to prep the body to be able to do those strength skills.
yeah. And like I think you've said this in your content before elsewhere, like your muscles will get stronger quicker than your ligaments and tendons.
Yeah.
So yeah, you might be able to do them, but your ligaments and tendons have got to catch up as well. So that takes a little bit longer.
Yeah. I believe, when people plateau, so people start at the gym and they can add 5 pounds to the bar every single week. Like, look, I'm getting stronger. Yes, that's the neuromuscular system and that's the muscles adapting. But then all of a sudden they plateau and they're like, I can't put more weight on the bar. Well, because it takes about 6 to 8 weeks for muscles to adapt. It takes 6 to 9 months for the tendons
Mm,
and the ligaments and the joints to catch up because the blood supply is much less. The collagen is different. It's more dense. It's going to take more time for turnover. So when people plateau on their weights, I'm like, you stay there and you keep just patterning that out. And then after about 6 months, all of a sudden, oh, this feels really light. Well, because the nervous system says, you know what, the structure's ready now. Let's put more weight on the bar. The Russians, they would do block training. They would do step periodization, where they would work at a weight, 50, 60%, and they would just pattern that out for 3 months
mm,
and they would add on 25 pounds or 30 pounds onto the bar the next quarter. So they do these big jumps. But what they were training is they were training neuromuscular patterning, but also connective tissue and structure
mm,
to make sure that they didn't outweigh or overload the connective tissue so they can make those big jumps.
mm,
Whereas in North America, it's just like we do kind of this linear periodization or linear loading. And it's just like a little bit weight, a little bit weight, a little bit weight. But all of a sudden you'll stop, you'll plateau because the connective tissue hasn't adapted to that resistance. So now, well, we're stuck here now. So
mm.
what's better? I mean, one's feels a little bit more boring. It's more discipline, but you can make bigger jumps. You're still going to get to the end game, but you're less likely to get hurt and blow up a tendon or blow up a joint with that disciplined approach of less weight, get really good at that pattern, load the connective tissue, worry about the structure first before the muscles, and then all of a sudden now you can start to make those bigger jumps. It's all
Mm,
about longevity. Like how long can you do this? Because the end game is how long can I keep doing this thing?
mm.
Well, the goal, there's no end goal. The end goal is death. Like if you're looking for a finish line, you're dead.
Yeah.
But the goal is how long can you keep playing the game?
Mm,
That's the goal. And that's what people fail to realize is this is a game that is supposed to keep going,
yeah.
not to find a finish line.
Yeah. And I've talked about this before about longevity. It's not about how long you can live, but that quality of life that you're living
Quality of life.
until the
Yeah.
day you die. Like you
Right.
want to be able to run, jump, move until that day comes. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's all about that last decade of quality of life.
Mm,
And yeah, okay, we can extend life to 100, but if that last 20 years is horrible, do you want
yeah.
that last 20 years? No. So we want those last 20 years right to grave to be amazing. But
Yeah.
that's where the discipline, the patience, the progressions, the checking in on yourself, making sure that you're moving adequately, you're a little bit more balanced with your movements, things start creeping up, sort it out before it becomes a problem. That's where that stuff comes in. And yeah,
Mm,
sometimes we have to back off on our training to sort stuff out, and that before we can hit the gas again.
mm. So we went over what somebody should do when they first started training, a little bit of an assessment, exercises they should focus on. Let's just say somebody's been training for, you know, half a decade, 5 years. They're into their training,
Yep.
they're feeling good, all that sort of stuff. What should they be thinking about compared to the person that's just started?
I would say have some form of self-assessment.
Mm,
So one of the research tells us that the biggest predictor of an injury is an old injury, which I do agree with, especially into
yeah.
that area. But what I see as the biggest predictor of a new injury is actually lack of self-awareness. People come in, they're like, this injury came out of nowhere. I don't know why this pain is here. I'm like, no, no, it didn't come out of nowhere. You just weren't paying attention to the repetitive things you were doing all day that caused the overloaded tissue.
Yeah.
And when we do these repetitive things, maybe just simply from us being one hand dominant, I'm right-handed. I am very left rotation dominant. So I rotate really well to the left. If I start to lose rotation to the right, I get a pinchy low back and I get a cranky left knee. So
Mm,
I have to do rotation stuff to the right to balance that out. Simply, and I'm very right-handed. I rotate, I throw right, I strike right, everything rotates to the left. Someone who's left-handed, they're going to have the opposite problem. So
mm,
simply being one hand dominant is going to create imbalances. And if we don't have some way of checking in with our how we're moving quality and quantity from one side to the other, and then we start doing these bilateral lifts like bench press and deadlift, well, now we're loading these bilateral patterns on top of an asymmetrical structure. And now we're overloading that left side, and we're wondering why my left knee and my left low back is getting cranky. Well, it's because I lost rotation to the right. I need to do stuff this way to balance myself out. And now all of a sudden, now I'm more symmetrical. Now picking up the heavy weight is safer.
mm,
So I created with my athletes, they would come in, they're like, well, this feels tight today and this feels tight. And I'm like, we're supposed to be training. Like we shouldn't be spending time on me trying to assess what these little problems are. So I created something called the SAM scan, self-awareness movement scan. And this was something, so on top of them coming in, they do their score, you know, what's your sleep? What's this? They do their grip strength. They do their blood pressure. All right, how's your dark cube? Dark cube looks good. Great. And then they put themselves through the self-awareness movement scan. So it's looking top down, center out. They would do a couple of cerebellar tests to make sure that their cerebellum's firing up evenly. Basically, three tests for that. They look at their neck, chin to chest, pinch, pain, pull, yes or no. Can they look up, rotate? Yeah, it looks good. Check their shoulders, check toe touch, back bend, rotation, side bend, single leg bound squat.
mm,
If any of those movements felt off, if they got pinch, pain, or pull, or one side felt a little different, they knew, okay, you know what? I didn't rotate to the left very well. Check your T-spine. Sit. Okay, you know what? I'm not rotating to the right, or maybe it's my hip.
mm.
They knew, okay, it's my hip that's stopping me from rotating, or it makes it feel different. Get a band on there, open that up, do some shin box exercises, do some side steps or some fire hydrants, check it again. That cleaned it up. Great, let's get to work. So by giving them a tool to assess just fundamental movements in their body to kind of balance things out, it saved us a lot of time of trying to
Mm.
troubleshoot it with me. Now they can fix it on their own. And now because their body feels good, we can get to training. So I gave them a tool that they could also use through the season of you don't need to run to the trainer every time something feels tight. Go through the SAM scan, sort it out so that these little aches and pains or these little tight areas don't become big problems.
Mm.
Those little pain signals, oh, that feels pinchy, this feels tight. Those are signals saying something's a little bit off. Maybe figure out what's going on and why. And then if it feels good after you've done it, great. You're all good. So now you can go do the high velocity stuff and the heavy lifts and with less risk of hurting something or making
Mm.
it a bigger problem.
I, I love that. I know you're talking about athletes, but the biggest
Mm-hmm.
challenge for me, for general public, is just getting them to be aware and be aware of their body and how it's feeling, all that sort of stuff. So an
Yeah.
assessment is a great way to do that because they've got
Yeah.
to connect with their body and think about those
Yeah.
things. So yeah,
Yeah.
I'm definitely going to take that and start implementing that for sure.
It takes, it takes a little time. So you working with universities and teams, the nice thing is you can take it with teams and teach the entire team how to do it.
Mm.
It takes a little time to obviously implement to get them on board to teach it. I just tell people, I'm like, look, just take one or two tests from
Yep.
it. Okay, yeah, you feel that, and then have them correct it. And then the more practice they get, the more comfortable. It takes less than 3 minutes to
Mm.
scan yourself, and then another 2 to 3 minutes of correcting the problem. So now you spend 6, 7, 8 minutes maybe of corrective exercise to balance out the body. Now you got all the time for training.
Yep.
How much time and potential injury did we save for the therapists trying to fix and sort out those problems
Mm.
when the athlete could do it on their own?
Yeah.
So that was a problem I was having. I'm like, how can I figure out a solution? Because these guys need to be self-sufficient. I'm not going to be
Mm.
with them all season. They have 3 months with me,
Mm.
and I don't know what their trainers are doing. I don't know, but if I can make them more resilient, if I can make them more self-aware and give them the capacity to do it on their own, well, then they stay on the ice longer. They stay on the field longer, and they're not worried about, oh, this feels tight. I'm going to get hurt. I haven't had my massage. I haven't had training. So it gives them that mental fortitude of, no, I'm capable. I have this capacity to do this, and I can fix this on my own.
Mm. And I think that's a sign of a great coach as well, getting them to be able to do it on their own without you. Because again, this industry can be quite trappy, making people think that they need you, overcomplicate things. And it's like, you need me, so keep paying me. But I love how you teach people how to do it on their own. So, how can people find more about you, learn more about your stuff, and connect with you?
So amtcertified.ca. So we have the advanced movement therapist certification on there for clinicians and coaches. We also have the SAM scan is up there, self-awareness movement scan. So for athletes, general population, we have, I actually have a muscle up shoulder health course on there as well, handstand course. So what I did with those is I tricked my yogis and my CrossFitters into self-correcting and self-assessing themselves with skills and taking all the components of that. So there's lots of content up there, lots of courses, but I have free stuff on my YouTube, Tommy Swales. I do longer format stuff up there. Instagram, swales.tom. TikTok is AMT guy. And then LinkedIn and Facebook is Tom Swales. So you can find lots of free stuff up on those platforms for whatever you need.
Amazing. Again, love all your content and I appreciate your time. We've gone a little bit over, so it's been great.
That's all
I've
right.
enjoyed the whole conversation. I've got a lot out of it, so I know the audience will as well.
Oh, perfect. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me, Jack.
Thank you.